I'm not attached to the word meditation at all. It's been so misused that most of what of meditation actually winds up being in practice is not what we're doing here.
Mhm.
That we're doing anapanasati. The question is anapanasati correctly practiced? Is that meditation or not? And I'll be on the side that argues against it,
But it doesn't matter.
but it doesn't matter. Yes, I did. I saw what you wrote, and uh, both sides of that needs to be addressed because you're seeing as one or the other, and
Mhm.
in fact, both of them need investigation. So let's take the second part first, which was that you don't want to sit down to meditate.
Mhm. Which means I'm not doing it right.
Right. Which is what you're telling me would be one definition of meditation. And on another front, or another way you're saying it is that you really don't want to sit down and relax and enjoy the moment. And I find that kind of hard to believe.
I mean, if I was trying to enjoy the moment, maybe that would be good. But if I'm trying to like focus on the breath and make sure that my mind doesn't wander, like I can daydream for 15 minutes. But I don't think that's what you
Okay.
want to do.
I I understand the concept of focusing
Hmm.
or concentration. And both of them have an exclusionary quality of basically the idea is let's throw out all of the that are not important and keep only the important things. That's one way of looking at it. But when we're looking at anapanasati, then we're not looking for focus at all.
Hmm.
Rather, we're looking for gathering together the factors that are needed. Okay. And when we gather the factors together that are needed, that's actually in many cases exactly opposite of focus or concentration. But we can mention that without spending a whole lot of time on it. Rather than saying focus on the breathing, what we're going to do is at least occasionally, like on the in breath, notice that this is a long, deep in breath. Doesn't take very long to do that. It's not one mind moment after another mind moment after another mind moment, looking at every little tiny little thing and don't miss anything. That's not the practice. It's rather mindfully that you're breathing in, because there's going to be a whole lot of other stuff to do. And then mindfully breathe out long, because we're looking for a kind of breath that has, let us say, two qualities to it or two results, and actually there are three. But the first two results that are immediate just by reading the sutta is that we become more familiar with the body. We get to know the body. By watching the breath, we begin to watch the body. And by watching the breath, we become more into the senses, especially the senses around breathing, especially in the sense that breathing in long and breathing out long, how do you know you're doing that? Do you look in a mirror?
No.
Do you need a camera? Maybe one of those parts of the machine of lie detectors that measure respiration by put a rubber band around you and measure it with a an old timey machine. Is that how we're going to do that, or is it something that you're aware of inside? Yeah, that's the way that we know that it's a long breath, is because we experience it as a long breath, which means we experience the body breathing long. So that's also part of our knowledge, mindfully experiencing the body as it's breathing, mindfully experiencing and waking up the body and becoming more familiar with being in the body. And you can do that anytime. It's got nothing to do with sitting on the floor, but it is easier to remember to do it just any old time if you've already practiced doing it sitting on the floor.
Mhm.
Okay. Just like the piano student that only needs to play that piano recital piece one time, and that's in the recital, right? But we need a practice time too
Mhm.
to practice it. Otherwise, we're not going to do any good when we need to do it. So that example is exactly what I mean by Murphy's Law, that we're practicing on the side to get ready for tough times ahead because you're sure going to have them.
Mhm.
Okay. And the reason you're going to have them is because you call them tough. And the reason you call them tough is because you're not paying attention.
I'm
And the
not.
reason you're not paying attention is because you're not mindful, you're not waking up. But if you do wake up, you can recognize that what's happening right now is no big deal. I can handle this.
Mhm.
Okay. So going in that direction is not focusing on the breathing at all, but rather the whole anapanasati practice is using the breath as an anchor to basically to be here now in the present moment, which is, by the way, very pleasant, as opposed to the past or the future. When we're thinking about the past, when we're thinking about the future, when we're thinking about out yonder and over there and way back when and maybe's tomorrow, that's all kind of critical thinking, trying to compare this with that, and this needs to be done, and that was a failure, and this was good, and all this judgments. But when we're in the present moment, nothing much is happening. And so there's no comparisons to be made. So that's one form of hindrance that we don't have to do, is doubt. We don't have to be in doubt. Everything right now is okay.
Mhm.
And I find it very ridiculous that so many Western meditators have such a bad idea about meditation that they think that it's work rather than learning to not work.
Uh, So the
I,
practice.
my dad had a saying that I liked very much. It was a funny saying. He says, "Work, I'm not afraid of work. I can lay down beside it and go to sleep." Now, that's a funny joke from him because he was actually a worker. He really did. Hard to keep up with him. So, um, this is the whole point is that you say that you don't want to meditate. And what I hear is that you have number one of two things. One is either the wrong attitude about what meditation is, or
Mhm.
number two, you've got a really, really weird attitude about human existence. Because everybody else I know would rather be joyful and happy and free from worries and sorrows and being able to be happy and content. And so that we can eliminate that you're not actually out there intentionally trying to harm yourself, that you would actually, you're out there intending to do yourself some value. Okay. So now all we have to work on is what is of value, because now we're going to the point of meditation is not of value. It's not going to take me in the direction of well-being and harmony. And so that's where we have to approach this. Is that uh, in a way we kind of want to do the meditation, because the benefits of it are quite stark. They're quite stark. They're visible and immediate and present. We can see the benefit immediately from it. That's the way to practice meditation, is we're doing it because it's good to do that, as opposed to doing a bunch of other stuff, which is not as enjoyable as just sitting and doing but to nothing.
I feel like I like meditating in a sense, but yeah, it still feels like work. It feels like enjoyable work, I suppose.
Well, perhaps then that we're talking about the issue of one's right effort, because right effort is actually the key to that, in the sense that effort is effort depending upon our attitude. And when we change the attitude, and the attitude can get changed through success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so once you begin to see the change, or see the results and see the benefit, we begin to change our attitude.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But the attitude then is related to one's right effort. And I'll give you this example. Mom goes into the kitchen and she sees that there's a lot of trash, a lot of garbage all piled up. And she says, oh, she gets exasperated. And then she, with or without exasperation, she asked her teenage son to go take out the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he does it, but he doesn't want to. He's only doing it because mom has fussed at him about it,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they had a squabble, but then he goes and he does it. But when he's doing it now, he does it in a way that's a great effort, because for him, he's doing it with great effort because he doesn't want to do it. Now, another story. Another story is that same teenager walks into the kitchen before his mom, sees the trash build up, and says, hot dog, I know my mom would be really proud of me if I took that trash out. And so he'll pick it up and he'll take it out. Now, which trip out to the garbage did he feel better about? The one where he was told that he had to do it, or the one when he figured out it was a good idea to do it?
The second one.
Okay, now we're going in the direction of what is the motivation? And when the motivation becomes joyful and enthusiastic, then the effort is not effort at all, but it becomes energetic. It's almost like it pops up because we like it, and it's a matter of developing attitude.
Yeah, I think my motivation is like delayed gratification. Like I'll do this and it will make me happier. But it won't be.
No, that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
Brother, I do this because it is happiness,
Mm-hmm.
rather than delayed gratification. That's what you've got in your mind. I've got to do the work and then I can be happy. And that's same old, same old. That's the way we've always done things.
Mm-hmm.
Delayed gratification, to where this is the gratification. As soon as you remember, you can take that breath and say, well, this is a whole lot better. Right now, it comes. What is it? That we're changing the thoughts from unwholesome to wholesome thoughts. And one of your unwholesome thoughts is, gosh darn it, this is a lot of work, but I'll get some happiness out of it someplace. And that's an unwholesome thought.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we want to do is throw out those kind of unwholesome thoughts and have the wholesome thought of, this is nice. Not someday, if I work hard, it will be nice. It's nice right now.
So you should like kind of like maybe not focus, but pay attention to the joy and try to
Pay attention to fearlessness. Pay attention to your fear and especially lack of it. Pay attention to your discomfort and more particularly the lack of it, which is comfort. Comfort, safety, security. And now we look for dissatisfaction. And when dissatisfaction is not there, which is where is satisfaction. And now we have safety, security, comfort, and satisfaction. And we have completed the definition of the Buddha Pali word sukkha.
Satisfaction.
That's that's, let us say, the immediate goal. The immediate goal is sukkha. And sometimes we have to practice that over and over again because it flitters away. And then we practice it again and it comes and there it goes again. It goes with every unwholesome thought that arises. But if we can keep the thoughts wholesome it's kind of like this. It's kind of like digging a big hole in the desert. And while we're digging a hole in the desert keeps filling in sand, both from gravity and because of the wind. And that happens with every mind moment. That we dig a little space in there, and then all this garbage falls right back in. But we keep digging anyway. The more we dig, the less we have to deal with the stuff coming back in. But we have to appreciate the fact that, hey, we've got a hole here.
It's a practice being grateful.
Right, we've gotten started. We've got a hole here. We've got some satisfaction going.
Mm-hmm.
And let's do it again. If it fills up with sand, that's all right. I can do it again. Back to satisfaction, over and over again.
Kind of. Do you know the Sisyphus?
Yes, you're talking about Sisyphus and the stone.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my take on the stone. Getting it at least close to the top of the hill, and then the right thing to do is to sit down on top of the hill, and with your feet, you kick it back down to the bottom because you don't need that stone anyway. But that actually we all are Sisyphus in the sense of why put in the effort, why bother?
Because it's worth it
Right?
right now.
Why bother? Because I always keep failing. Oh, poor me. So it's both a pity party and it is also the word would be sloth, which is a hindrance, and the hindrance is based upon doubt. And the doubt in that sense is the doubt that he'll ever get it up there. We're using a completely different analogy because we can get it up there. We got it up there, and then we saw it roll down again. And so, all right, well, let's go make a nice platform for this thing, and then we'll roll it back up there again and let it sit on this platform. It'll stay there for a while, and then the wind or something, the sand erodes or whatever, and it falls back down. Never mind, go get the darn thing. We've got it up here before. We'll get it up here again, and we'll prop it up even better this time.
We're farther up and up, farther up the hill.
Right, because we know how to do this. We've got the confidence that we can keep going because we know that we've got the benefits. See, you're the guy who is the Sisyphus that never gets it halfway up the hill before it falls.
I feel like the sloth hindrance is probably better. Do you say a hindrance? It's probably my biggest hindrance.
Yes, the hindrance of sloth, this built-in doubt, which basically has the terminology of what's the point? What's the use?
I'm not making any progress. That type of thought.
Right. There have been songs about it. One of them is that all there is? Is that all there is? I mean, life is like that. You're going to find something, and when you get it, is that all there is?
It's like a hedonistic treadmill.
Uh-huh. So when people want life immortal, they want to live forever. And then they become a vampire. And then they say, is that all there is? Just constant thirst for blood? So that's an attitude of Sisyphus, is that all there is to it? And what all there is to it is constant failure, one failure after another failure after another failure. But in this practice, it's actually so dead easy to do it. It really is. You can actually stop what you're thinking and think something new. And that's basically all we have to do. Is to recognize that what we're thinking is unwholesome, and we decide we're going to have wholesome thoughts, and wholesome thoughts are a whole much more enjoyable than unwholesome thoughts. Right then and there, within let us say at least a quarter of a second, you're able to change that thought from an unwholesome to a wholesome thought. So in the next few mind moments, that thought, if it continues, will allow the feelings to kick in. But if it's a wholesome, unwholesome, 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 wholesome, unwholesome, 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 wholesome, unwholesome, 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 we're going to stay mostly in the unwholesome. But if we start getting it wholesome, 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 then we begin to really enjoy the benefit. This is why the Buddha talks about applied and sustained thought, that we apply it to the wholesome and then keep the wholesome going. But the motivation of keeping the wholesome going is because it's so much better than the unwholesome.
And so the wholesomeness would be, at least I'm meditating as well as I'm meditating. At least I feel as good as I feel. Or maybe not at least. It's still a bad attitude, but I feel.
All right, I'm not attached to the word meditation at all. It's been so misused that most of what of meditation actually winds up being in practice is not what we're doing here. That we're doing anapanasati. The question is anapanasati correctly practiced? Is that meditation or not? And I'll be on the side that argues against it.
But it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. What does matter is in fact, if someone is practicing meditation correctly, they're not worried about is this meditation or not. They're more focused on how nice this is.
So the job,
how peaceful this is, how relaxed this is, how no problems and no worries and nothing to do and no place to go. What a relaxed state of being. Wow. And when we talk about it like that, it frightens some people. But that's because they're afraid of things. And if they would address that fear and become fearless, then they would really like being relaxed. So we have to practice becoming fearless, because we spend our whole lives being afraid of this, that, and the other thing, especially the things that might happen.
The hypotheticals.
Right. The fear of the hypothetical and the fear of the false positive is about all the fear we've got left.
And it's not good fear.
Especially if we're wise. Because if we're wise, we will avoid real fear. We'll see it far enough in advance to avoid it and take the other journeys or take the other path.
And we live in a
Take a hike so we can get away with it. If you see the danger in advance, then we can just maneuver away from it. Which means now there's nothing to fear because we're wise enough to stay out of danger. And so because we are wise enough to stay out of danger, right now there's nothing to fear.
We believe in ourselves.
Exactly. Confidence. That's what we've been talking about. The Pali word is shraddha.
Shraddha?
And I wouldn't call it believing in oneself. That's what religious people do. This is actually better than that because this is knowing. This is confidence.
There's no need for belief.
Right. No need for belief. I understand that that's a common statement of believe in yourself, but that's because that's all they have. We've got something much better than that, and that is results. Okay, proof positive that this stuff works. If you do it one time and it works, and you do it again, it works, and you do it again and it works, and you do it again and it works. You not only are you getting the habit of doing it, but you're also getting the confidence. And when you think, oh, I should meditate, and then you have the thought, oh, I don't want to meditate, both of those are wrong thoughts. Those are both unwholesome thoughts. So wakey, and recognize the next thought should be a wholesome thought. And what is that? Hey, I'm meditating right now. This is meditation. In-breath meditation, out-breath meditation. It feels a whole lot better than having an internal squabble. You ought to meditate, I don't want to. You ought to meditate, I don't want to. So you see the distinction there. One is an argument between the superego and the id, or the parent and the child, and the other one is the adult. And the adult says, "Yep, doing it." So that's the kind of attitude change that we need. Is that we can do this, and it's nice when we do it. And it's almost better than anything else.
Sometimes.
And so what we do, we only do in the service of keeping this non-doing going.
So would the best meditation literally be, no, I'm not for me, but for like an advanced practitioner, would the best meditation be do nothing?
Yeah. Where do you think this the Zen haiku comes from?
What haiku?
Well, no place to go and nothing to do, and the grass and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. No place to go, nothing to do, just sitting here. The grass, the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This is actually the goal of every workman. Name me a workman who does not plan on retiring.
Mm-hmm.
When is the workman's work done?
Never, if he likes it.
Yeah, so the answer should be, if one is wise, right now. I'm done. I'm finished.
Because this isn't work.
Well, it does so long as you have presence of mind. It only works when the mind goes back into hindrance of, oh my gosh, there's work to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can maintain a state of joy, then the world becomes a toy. When your mind is full of joy, the world becomes a toy, and now you can just go play. But we have to get our mind in that state of joy and get able to maintain it, because oftentimes we forget that the world is a toy and we begin to think it's real. Especially when it tries really hard to make you understand that it's real.
I have a weird question.
But you can do everything as a toy. Everything can be done joyfully.
Is this kind of, I might be putting religion into this, and I don't need to, but like, this is what the Brahmins believe, like the world is a dream or something.
The Brahmins believe what?
That the world is a dream. Like a,
Well, um, that's a way of saying, or a way of stating and pointing to the actual fact, the actual dream. Um, if we define dreaming and the word dream more correctly, most people think of the word dream as merely night dreams
Mhm.
without recognizing that most of the time, ere the fourth grade teacher kept telling Johnny to stop daydreaming, Johnny is continuing to daydream the rest of his life.
And is there anything
He and many of the other kids in the room continuously are daydreaming. Okay, so now the Brahmins are pointing in the right direction that most people don't live in reality. They live in their own manufactured mental state that can be rightly called a dream state. Daydreaming, thinking about something else rather than what the teacher is pointing out on the blackboard. He's not paying attention. His mind is scattered. He's off someplace else. Okay. Literally thinking about the past, thinking about the future, thinking about what's out the window, thinking about what's out the window across the street, down the block, over the hill, and miles away from here is
far.
all daydreaming. Almost all of human thought is daydreaming, except that in that regard, it's because we keep running into fearful things in our dreams. Perhaps we should call them daymares. Daymare, which is in fact a nightmare in a daydream. And that's in fact what happens with most of the people who are doing stuff on Wall Street is they go from one moment of nightmare to the next, and it's all in their mind. Not paying attention to what's really going on, which really was going on is that I feel really bad. I'm having a dark night of the soul while I'm having daymares. In fact, it's a dark day of the soul. And it's all a dream, it's all daydreams. And the Buddha understood the mechanism completely of exactly how we do that. And so we can spend at least a few minutes on introduction to Paticca Samuppada. This is the teaching of Paticca Samuppada, and the best way to understand it is how is the Buddha's method of describing how the mind works, state by state, step by step, that leads from an observation of an object in the out there into feeling bad about it, to where the feeling bad about it had nothing to do with the actual object out there, because everybody that sees that object doesn't feel that way. Why do some people feel one way about what's out there and other people feel another way, right? Because some of them are having one kind of daydream and the other one are having another kind of daymare. But it's all a dream. The reality of it is that we're not sure. We need to go investigate things further, or a better way of looking at it is forget all about it. It's not my business. Don't care. So this is where we're going with this: is that the whole idea of the practice of anapanasati is to wake up and start living our lives in reality rather than living in a dream state. Because often the dream state that we're in is far from reality. But if we're awake, we're much closer to reality. And that would be actually an easy working definition of dukkha. Then, what is dukkha? Is that when a human being's dream state is far, far from reality, that means that it is more and more subject to dukkha. And when the mind is closer and closer to reality, and see things the way things really are, then the less likely he will experience dukkha or suffering from it.
And is that because the way things are, is that everything is fine?
Well, that's because we keep going around thinking everything is not fine, where in fact everything is fine. I've heard some people say it like this, that it's a lot of work to fix dukkha. And that's completely the wrong attitude about it. Dukkha
A
is
lot
to
of
be
work to have.
avoided, not repaired. Dukkha is to be merely avoided. It's to be, you step out of the way. There is, in fact, in the Dhammapada, a famous quote that says, to avoid evil, to do good, and to purify the mind. That's the quote of the Buddha. Now, what we mean by that is that in Western culture, we have the idea that if we find evil, we got to trounce on it, poke it in the eye, bust it in the gut, knock a tooth out, blind it, do anything we can to harm it. But we don't recognize that, in fact, evil is very much like a tar baby.
A tar? A what?
A tar baby. You know, they put tar on the road, they mix it with sand and make asphalt out of it. Tar is the sludgiest sludge of
I know that tar is what the
the
road.
manufacture of petroleum.
Mhm.
This
Oh,
is
so a tar baby is before the tar gets made.
so a tar baby is in fact taking a bunch of tar
Mhm.
and fashioning it into a baby. And there's
Wait,
a
seriously?
story about this.
Wait, an
And it is,
actual
in fact,
baby?
it comes out of the it actually comes out of a tale called The Songs of the South. And it's about the United States, the South in the United States, and during slavery times.
Mhm.
And that is, this was written by, or is known by Uncle Remus Tales, and it's a book, and it's in the dialogue of the South. Yeah, very, very heavy accented Southern accent of 100 years, 150 years ago.
Wait,
Almost 170
interrupted.
years. Okay. So anyway, the story is about Brer Bear, Brer Fox, and Brer Rabbit. Now,
Mhm.
Brer Bear is kind of dumb, but he's a muscle man. And Brer Fox is wily. And Brer Rabbit is the hero or the star of the show. And
Mhm.
so Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit get the idea that they're going to make a tar baby and set it aside the road and wait for to see what Brer Rabbit does with the tar baby. Well, Brer Rabbit comes hopping down the trail and he sees the tar baby and he says, "How's y'all?" And the tar baby don't respond.
Mhm.
And so he goes up and approaches and tries to get a conversation going. The tar baby just sits there, don't say nothing. And Brer Rabbit gets hot and angry and hopping mad and jumping up and down. And finally, he pokes that tar baby with his fist and he gets the fist stuck in it. And then he takes his other fist and he gets that stuck in it. And then he kicks it with his foot and he gets that stuck and he kicks it with the other. And now he's just all balled up with his tar baby. Okay. That's exactly what we do when we try to fix things that are broken, is we wind up entwangled with the problem.
Mhm.
Okay. And I can give you many examples of people getting frustrated, for instance, of untangling fish line and finally throw it out because they can't do it. It's too much work, too tedious, spent too much time, frustration, and finally they give up in failure. And they could have just snipped the line without spending all of that time. So that's the way that we treat the world. We treat the world as a tar baby, something that needs to be fixed. And we see even the dukkha within our own mind is like a tar baby that needs to be fixed. And all we do is get balled up in it again. So it is not too much work to fix dukkha. Dukkha is not to be fixed, it's to be avoided in this mind moment. Just throw it out right now. Throw out those unwholesome
It's not
thoughts.
important.
It's very easy to do, is just remember. And so this is why we set it aside 4, 5, 6 times a day, is to practice so that we really know how good it can feel to just sit here with nothing to do and no place to go. And it feels really great to just sit here with no place to go and nothing to do, and everything is all right. Everything is fine. No worries. And if we do that 4, 5 times, 6 times a day, we begin to feel that way more often.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, the world becomes a toy to play with rather than a tar baby to fix.
The world becomes your oyster.
Right, the whole world becomes joyful. There's no problems out there at all. All we have is just people who want to be friends. So this is a way of looking at it. If we think of meditation as something that needs to be done to get a goal fulfilled later, then it's just ordinary.
It's not
Okay,
super mundane.
that would be ordinary right view.
Mm.
Wrong view would be, oh, what's the point?
Mhm.
Oh, what's the use? Okay, I don't see any value out of it. And so there's where sloth and torpor come in is an attitude based upon the doubt that I can get this stone of Sisyphus up the hill or not. Okay, this is basically, so it's really a victim's loser's attitude that often has rebellion built into it. And so now they rebel, but they don't rebel against their own stupidity. They rebel against the authorities. And you know who the authority is? The guy who owns that rock that Sisyphus is pushing up the hill. At least in the mind of Sisyphus here.
Just
And
let the
so
rock
some
go.
Sisyphus is just not going to care because what's the point? I'll never get it up there. I'm a failure anyway.
Mhm.
So that's one way. The other way, the ordinary right view is in all of this horse shit, there's got to be a pony someplace.
So that would be delayed gratification.
Right.
Mhm.
Delayed gratification. And the noble view is to look at what you're doing. Come out of your misery right now. Be happy right now. Being miserable right now is not going to make you less miserable later. It's going to get you in the habit so that when you later, you'll be even better at being miserable. You're practicing. If you practice misery right now, you'll be even more miserable later. But a lot of people say, oh, if I'm miserable now, I'll be better off later.
Mhm.
This is, in fact, why people practice austerities. This is why people go to the gym for delayed gratification, and it almost always winds up backfiring.
You have to enjoy.
Practicing misery will just get you more misery. It may get you a lot of muscles, but it won't get you less miserable.
Mhm.
That's a way of thinking about it now, is that um, we practice anapanasati because that's the only new skill to develop of coming out of misery of the mind, to come out of the unwholesome thoughts that make us miserable and start having wholesome thoughts that are joyous and happy. So when you have thoughts of you ought to go meditate, you see, you're making yourself miserable. And then you come back with, I don't want to meditate. And now everybody's miserable inside. And so I'm back to doing it.
Mhm.
So we've covered one side of your question there and also been toying with the other side of the question that you were saying that then there is the issue of rather than meditating, why don't you just go do what you want to do? And then you pinned it on me and said, because that's what you said to do. And that's not what I said to do. Wanting things is tanha.
Mhm.
Okay. Wanting to do something means that it's got to be done, it's work to do, it's grasping and clinging, rather than looking at it like a toy.
I see.
Okay, it's a toy to play with. You can do it because you like it. And now you're saying, well, I only want to do what I like to do. I can say, okay, like that. But you didn't say that. You said want.
Mhm.
Liking is Vedana, wanting is Tanha.
Mhm.
Notice the difference.
Mhm.
One is just merely liking. I can like it, and I'm good. Okay. I can see a new product, a billboard for a brand new cell phone or a brand new 5G, this, that, whip do, la da thing, and I can say, that's nice. I like that. But that's a completely different attitude of looking at it and say, gosh, I've got to have that. Where do I find a store that's got that? How much is it going to set me back? Do I have the money for it? Gosh, this is a lot of worry to get that thing. And now we go down into tanha. That's tanha, wanting something that we don't have.
Mhm.
Okay, as opposed to enjoying what we're doing in the moment.
Mhm.
But oftentimes people are doing something, but they're not doing it and enjoying it in the moment. They're doing it while they're thinking about some problem they've got. And so they wind up doing it half-heartedly, ignorantly, and maybe with flaws, while at the same time, they're miserable. And guess what? Then they blame it on the job instead of recognizing that it's all in the mind. So going back to that statement that you made, in fact, is that what we want then is still part of that dream world that we were talking about earlier, tying that back into it.
We don't have what we
That
want.
that you've already got everything that you need and everything is good enough as it is, and the only thing that there is left to do is to enjoy and play with whatever comes up.
Mhm.
So like for me, visas every 3 months, all kinds of things, vaccinations, many different possibilities of things to come up, then it either be a drudgery and a bad thing to do, spending hours online, or it can be completely joyful.
You can meditate. Wow.
You can meditate and you can giggle and laugh and tell all your jokes to all of the people you've never met before in line. You can have a sing along.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of things that we can do while we're standing in line if that's what needs to be done. But most people stand in line
And
and
he,
they're unhappy and miserable. Others are standing in line and talking to others, and they're not worried too much about standing in line. But the ones who are not talking, they're mostly miserable. So there's all kinds of possibilities. But rather than thinking about meditating versus not meditating as the object, a much better way of talking about it would be wholesome activities versus unwholesome activities.
Mhm.
Because everybody standing in line is going to be miserable. That's what lines are for. It's delayed gratification.
Mhm.
That's the very issue for it. You get in line so that you can get to the front of the line.
Mhm.
So, and what a joy that is. Every line that you've ever gotten in front of, or that's joyful. Finally, you're out of the dukkha. The line you were in was dukkha. Why does it have to be dukkha? Why can't it be joyful while we're still in line?
Why can't the destinations be joyful?
Well, the
Why
answer
can't the
is
journey
because
be
most of
joyful?
the people are in the dream of lines are bad, cues are bad.
Mhm.
Nobody likes to stand in line. Why is that? Because they tell themselves that they don't want to stand in line. It's a miserable place to be, and they're going to prove it. But you see, the reality is that the line itself has nothing to do with unhappiness or happiness. The line itself is absolutely neutral. The unhappiness of having to stand in line is all mental, so it's a dream.
So there is a dream, and then there is reality.
And then there is a reality. The reality is a queue is a queue, a line is a line, and the dream is that everybody's unhappy in line. Shakespeare said, all the world's a play, and everyone is an actor. I would go so far as to say, yes, everyone is an actor on the stage of life, and all the world's a stage. And everyone is standing there reading their own script. Everyone has a script to read. What is the script we're reading? The superego, all that stored information from our past. We're reading a script, and we don't even recognize that everybody else is on stage and everybody else is reading their script, and no one is looking at the play. Everybody is in their own dream, and nobody's looking at the whole stage. But we can set the script down and take a look at what's going on. And when we took a look at what's going on, we realized that, hey, there's an awful lot of empty seats in the audience. In fact, the audience is completely empty because all of the people are on stage. So we can go sit in the audience and get a nice, comfortable chair and just hang out and watch the show. And again, we see it as a playful thing. It's a play, it's a stage play, and everyone's an actor on stage. But we have to keep remembering that, because sometimes we get into the delusion or the dream that this is real. What is real? This script that I'm reading, this part that I'm playing, the part that other people are playing, etc., is all real. That's not the reality. The reality is that I'm reading a script, and he's reading a script, and the other guy's reading a script. That's the reality of it, not the content of the script, but the fact that all he's doing is reading a script. That's the reality of it. We're just regurgitating all of the old stuff in our own mind, all of the past. And we have a choice of coming out of that and being in the reality, but we have to keep remembering that. We have to keep digging that hole, because the sand keeps falling in. It's blown in. Okay, so the hindrances are, we can also say that instead of an analogy, we can say that neurons in the brain build pathways depending upon usage.
The myelin stuff, yeah.
They're just like highways. Some highways or some roads have very, very little traffic, and so they're very poorly maintained. Often they're not very wide. But when a highway has a whole lot of traffic, then it's going to be like a major structure, a freeway, many lanes, well maintained, well guarded, that kind of thing. That also exists inside the mind, which means if we start in the mind taking the pathways and the roads that we don't normally take in the mind, they will actually gain strength, and the big highways will become neglected.
Neuroplasticity.
And over time, the highways that used to be the major way that we thought, we don't think that way anymore. Those highways don't exist anymore. They're not useful. They've been closed for repair permanently. And so this is a way of thinking, but we have to actually get off of that highway and get onto those byways. And in this regard, we're talking about we have to get off the highway to hell and get onto the path that don't lead nowhere.
Oh.
Got no destination. We're just enjoying the journey, just enjoying the trip.
The highway that is heaven.
The highway that is heaven, exactly. So this is it. You have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. But every time you practice, you're getting the immediate benefit out of it. It's like you remember, are you going to be in heaven or are you going to be in hell?
Mhm.
And so forget about wanting things. It's
Mhm.
like being on the highway to hell, wanting to be in heaven.
Just be on.
All you have to do is just take the next turn, and the next, mental moment, tenth of a second later, and you're on the highway to hell. You are in heaven because you're off the highway to hell. And so this is what we would want, something that we can do immediately. Take that breath. Well, I'm glad I don't have to think about that email. Well, I'm glad I don't have to think about that thesis right now. Well, I don't have to think about that interview that's coming up. I don't have to think about it right now.
Mhm.
But it might be a good idea to have some time to think about the interview, but we do so happily knowing that we're prepared for it. So now our thoughts about the interview will become wholesome. But in the beginning, we have the thought, wow, I don't have to think about that right now. I can be free from that. That's not a bother. That's like work that I can lay down and beside and go to sleep. I'm not afraid of it. So this is a new attitude and a new way of practice.
Mhm.
That instead of saying, oh, you ought to meditate, and then you say, no, I don't want to, make a change. As soon as that thought you ought to meditate, the answer is, you're right, I am. Thanks for the reminder.
So that's like doing it throughout the day. If you think auto meditate, and then if you don't have the time, just take like 2 seconds.
You just had the second. You just had the time.
Mhm.
You just spent the time arguing with yourself over you didn't have time to meditate, and that time could have been spent meditating.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a way of practice. You go get that and start enjoying your moment. Remember to enjoy the moment. That's your practice of meditation, is to have wholesome thoughts. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you again later.
Thanks.